Rise of the Robots, the book by Jim Murdoch. Introduction. The Einsam Archipelago was a scattering of planets, 20 in all, locked into orbit around a minor sun, some 5 light years distant from the home planet, Mother Earth. The EA was a heaven-sent discovery for the migrant humans from Solar System 1. Here was a close grouping of habitable planets, which mimicked their own science and presented an opportunity to begin over again a new anthro-ecological history for the human species. When ecological catastrophe was finally proved to be unavoidable, man at last united across the home planet and began the migration project. The huge Chrysalis-class vessels were constructed and became the last locations on Earth which could support any mass population. The ships were modular and was steadily enlarged sections by section for 200 years. Over this period, Mother Earth's thinning atmosphere and weakening gravity slowly allowed these craft to part from the planet's surface and begin their journey through a half-century to the new worlds of the Ensam Archipelago prospected by the Pathfinders. The unsigned planets were colonized by a new generation of man, a dynamic breed of mixed-race humans who saw no fear in these new worlds. Their science and philosophy, cultured in a lifetime of space travel, equipped them perfectly for the task of building a super civilization across this new solar system. By the 13th century, the new humans' command of science had established a thriving, advanced technology society across the planet chain. Powerful, independent city-states grew up, focusing sprawling populations in islands of vitality amongst the deserts of the plundered mineral-rich crusts of the planets. Metropolis 4, on the prime planet of Ti Cedra, was the oldest and most successful of the archipelago's city-states. Chapter 1. Metropolis 4's security services occupied the tallest building in the heart of Central 1. The massive Flagstaff structure drove into the dull haze that hung over the city. Its rotating aerofoil command floors cruised silently around the central column, brushing in and out of the mist. Command Floor 3 hummed with routine monitoring activity. It was early evening, Friday, New June 1st, 3012. The floor commandant, Piaget, was making his way along the walkway between the comms monitoring banks. He was heading back to his desk up on the mezzanine in the glazed bow section of the department. He'd had a hell of a week. His teams had logged an unprecedented increase in illegal transmissions, and the senior staff assembly, which he'd just left, had all but carpeted him for not coming up with conclusive source and solution action. He had mobile units out all over the city and into the wastelands, but had gained no significant intelligence. Those latest insurrectionist transmissions were operating under a new generation comms code, making their content impenetrable to his decrypt team. As he walked past Kramer, section leader of the mobile units, he caught the end of a voice link with Lander 6 out in the wastelands. He bellowed to the surprised SL, his message also unmistakably for the rest of the section. Tell those guys not to bother coming home until they've got something to justify their pay credits. They reckon they might have something for us, sir, Krayama replied promptly. But they're having problems uploading the data. Conton is going to retry when they've cleared the New Mines Ridge and they've got better topography. What's Cotton doing out there? He was supposed to be with decryption all this week. I believe he was there until this morning, sir. Then he decided he wanted to get nearer to the new transmission source we'd found. He's with Walker. You don't need to worry, sir. Krayama smiled at the reassurance he'd just given the commandant. I need to worry, and I consider your recommendations to be a Section 1 impertinence, Krayama. Do your job and keep your assertions to yourself, or I'll have you back on the screens. Piaget strode off, his thoughts now back on the assembly. The open treads of the metal stairs up to the management mez trembled as the heavy man powered towards his workstation. Piaget swung himself around the final 180-degree turn and crested the flight. Over at his station, he could already see his email icon flashing up on the screen. More crap to sort out, he was vocalizing his thoughts. Stress counseling session 1. Spot the signs. Sitting at his station, Piaget took a long, deep breath and swung round in his chair to take a look over the city. He needed to chill a little before he started the next chapter of hassle. Friday evening was breaking out over Metropolis 4. Piaget glanced at his watch and noted it was already 7:30. He could see the Wonder theme park over near his home in West Central 3. Strobes and hollow projectors beamed up the evening's theme. He couldn't make out what was on tonight. After all, he was almost at the same altitude as the focus plane for the projectors. From this shallow angle, they lit the haze-like pools of colored mercury. He thought of his son, pestering his mother to take him along. Command Floor 2 came cruising around the central mast and obscured his view. Logistics planning and bad aircon. They also said that CF2 vibrated like hell, though he'd never noticed it. And if any of the wings were going to fly off the big mixer, then CF2 was candidate number 1. Piaget screwed back round to his desk and winked at the email icon. The cube shuttered with a sampled popping noise, and he read the news. The message displayed all the usual stuff. Exec assembly minutes, staff productivity codings, and field team activity reports. He muttered, FTA, to the machines and scanned the list for Lander 6's bulletin. He followed the log of reports down to the point where Koton had made his positive ID on a suspected insurrectionist transmission. The location was the Loris Depression, about 250 k's out from the National Mineral Site over the New Mines Ridge. That put the source over 300 k's from M4 itself. It seemed a long way out for the regular antisocial elements to be operating. The Aegis were not normally so mobile. He pondered that it could be a group from M2, some further 100 k's to the north. Piaget winked at the last voice link box and listened to the transmission. Koton's voice came through on what was obviously a messy comms link. The Loris Depression was notorious for bouncing signals all over the place. Fix made on transmission 632. High power signal. Radio. VHF and... A loud crack interrupted the communication. decrypting and loading to SatLink. The transmission broke completely in a blast of static. Piergat leaned back from the terminal, grimacing at the noise. Then the message continued, almost completely jammed. Upload not possible. Heavy mineral. Atmospheric contamination breaking. SatLink. Losing all comms. Will retry nearer home. Expect transmission. The message cut dead. Piaget noted the time entry. 1915. It was now 1945, and there was no further news. He rose from his station and walked to the mezzanine rail. He could see Kramer leaning back in his chair, looking down his nose at the master comms terminal. Piaget leaped the section leader on his portable and watched him jerk back to answer his call. Anything from Cotton, Kramer?
Nothing at all, sir. Met reports heavy weather in the Loris area. Pretty well, all air links are down.
Okay, Kramer. I'll be leaving in half an hour. Let me know as soon as you get something. If it's after 2015, reach me in my mobile.
Very good, sir.
Piaget returned to his station and flicked off his display. Turning back to the view of the city, he watched the auto-wash trigger across the massive expanse of glass. Thin rivers of sandy water scribbled over the curvature. Beyond the rim of M4, the western horizon was a blank, bright orange. 8:15 saw Piaget somewhat happier. He had rebooted his terminal, completed his action returns for the exec assembly, and he had found another message on his email, informing him that he had succeeded in being selected for Stage 2 executive selection, a staff ranking that would finally get him out of this nitty-gritty routine and get him an apartment in Sunnyside, upwind of the city center. The city below was now quite illuminated. Tracks of light splayed out from under the tower. Here in the center of M4, the tree-lined boulevards moderated the hard edges of the route system. The city looked quite inviting, like somewhere in the movies 1,000 years ago. Distance leads enchantment to the view, Piergat muttered to himself, quite proud of his spontaneous lyricism and this evidence of his culturedness. As he descended to the walkway above the monitoring floor, he searched for Kramer at his terminal, but saw only an empty chair and his screen in secure mode.
Anybody know where Kramer is?
The commandant barked at the two staffers at the far end of the row of comms terminals. Their blank expressions were answer enough, and Piaget did not even wait for a reply. Making a mental note to check the SL's productivity code first thing Monday, he set off a pace in the direction of the mess room. Bursting through the air screen into the mess reception, Piaget wheeled round and scanned the login table.
Can I help you, sir?
The duty monkey had come up behind the commandant and caught him quite unaware.
Kramer,
uttered the flustered officer.
Have you seen Kramer in here in the last half hour?
No, sir, he's not logged in, and I certainly haven't seen him.
Right. Duty staffer, put a bar on anyone else from comms monitoring come in here, and if you see Kramer, tell him that I want to see him immediately. I'll be in Met Central, floor 5, and relay that order to comms.
Very good, sir. The duty monkey turned smartly and headed for the internal information panel. Piaget was actually impressed. A duty monkey acting like a serviceman.
What's your name, duty staffer?
Not stopping from his attention to the panels, the monkey replied,
Ludasi, sir.
Very good, Ludasi. Carry on.
The commandant turned out of the mess hall and marched briskly along to the elevator bay, pushing past a crowd of end-of-shift operatives He thrust his priority card into the slot. He gained some satisfaction from the barely audible groan that his action aroused. This group would now probably lose at least half an hour of their Friday evening, as Piaget had now commandeered one of the 6 already overworked main tower elevators. The prioritized elevator, somewhere down the 15th floor, had now stopped, no doubt disgorging another squash of disgruntled occupants, heralded by a racing floor indicator and a piping alarm. The elevator presented itself for Piaget's disposal. The commandant stepped in, turning to smile at the dismayed faces as the doors hissed closed. The elevator dragged on Piaget's stomach as the priority mode acceleration took the big man by surprise. He rocked back and caught hold of the rail around the polished, cylindrical capsule. He remembered that he hadn't eaten for 6 hours. The thought did not mitigate his brooding annoyance at the absent Kramer.
S.L. Kramer, you're back on the screens. No question about it.
The soothing female voice announced. Command floor 5. The doors parted, and Piaget stepped out into the elevator bay. As he approached the registration desk across the reception hall, an incongruous whiff of food caught his nostrils, further stirring his stomach. Compass-like, his nose panned for the source. Immediately on entering Meteorology Central, his opinions on the sloppy management of the department had been reaffirmed.
See to it that your mess area air screen's looked at,
was Piaget's opening statement to the bewildered staffer at the security panel. Sorry, sir?
Your air quality stinks, duty staffer. The air screen on the mess area is inoperative. I am recommending that you pass on this information to your maintenance section.
The staffer craned her neck to look at the entrance to the mess area just around the corner, then ducked back to the commandant. Of course, sir. I'll enter that straight away. She bowed her head to address the terminal below the counter. Piaget interrupted this action, flattening his palm on the ID pad.
Piaget, Floor Commandant Comms CF3. I need to see the supervising officer in Met observation. Leave the maintenance for later and check me in now.
Very good, sir. The terminal emitted a peep. You may enter. Please use gate 8. Do you know the way, sir?
Thank you.
Piaget was already halfway towards the security gates. Crossing the flux mat into the moving wing section of the department, Piaget found himself on a side mez above the top level of Command Floor 5. To his right was the glazed bow section, starkly monochromatic in orange light from the sunset. Following the arc of the roof ribs back from the bow, the vast hall darkened, and he could see the balcony rail silhouetted against the top edge of the enormous Met screen, which hung all 5 levels high in the trailing edge section of the command floor. Piaget made his way down onto the level and reached the balcony rail. He paused, leaning on the steelwork, and took in the great picture in front of him. A real-time satellite view of Metropolis 4 and about half the continent. Right over the Loris Depression was a huge brownish vortex. As he watched, text overlays appeared on the various weather systems, giving local pressure, wind speeds, and temperature. Loris recorded as 0.2 pressure, 240 kph winds, and 300 degrees ground temp. Atrocious flying conditions. Atrocious any kind of conditions. He'd go down to the screen monkeys and get them to do a zoom for him.
Commandant Piaget!
Kramer's voice, a little breathless, broke Piaget's thoughts.
I'm glad you're here. I've been trying to reach you in your mobile.
What the hell are you doing here, man? Why did you leave your station?
Piaget wasn't going to let his anger just vanish, although he already suspected that Kramer, a cocky but competent officer, would have some rational explanation for his presence on the Met floor.
Well, sir,
I received a transmission from Lander 6, very broken. Koton reported rapid weather deterioration and was losing his navcoms. He gave me a position over Loris, and then I completely lost him.
And you chose not to relay this information to me?
Piaget leant with his back to the rail, arms outstretched along the curved top section. I was unable to reach you on voice, sir, so I emailed a notification.
I didn't receive it, Kramer.
I don't understand that, sir.
So why did you leave your station?
I went down to air traffic. I couldn't get them to send me a screen. They were having all sorts of trouble with the entire north and western sector navcoms. All the ground beacons were out. Still are, I think. And SatNav was dropping out because of the mineral storms. I wanted to get some hard information for you, sir, before I contacted you again.
This is Met Central, Kramer. Air traffic is on CF1.
The interrogation was broken by a paging announcement asking Kramer to go to Met Mapping. Sorry about this confusion, sir. I think Met Mapping has something for us. Piaget grunted in acknowledgement and nodded for the SL to lead the way, and followed him, zigzagging down the flights of stairs to level 1. At the bottom of the stairs, Kramer led the way to a trench of monitor banks directly back from the center of the massive Met screen, which now reached above them like some huge graffiti-covered wall. Artificial color rendering had switched in to compensate for the onset of night. The weather cocktail swirled seductively. Piaget halted as Kramer dropped down the short flight of stairs and approached an operative at one of the largest screens in the center of the row. He touched the man on the shoulder, who turned around and nodded. Piaget saw the operative key in a command on the code pad as Kramer made his way back along the row of screen monkeys. The section leader has the last 2 hours met for us, sir, and he's got some infrared tracking which he thinks could show Lander 6. Piaget stepped past his subordinate and negotiated the steps down into the monitoring trench in a couple of strides. Beyond him, Kramer felt the floor spring. The Met Mapping section leader was already running the weather history as Kramer caught up with his commandant.
Take it from 1915, SL. That's our last transmission log from Lander 6.
Piaget hulked over the operative's back, completely obscuring Kramer's view of the screen. Kramer edged around the pair to where he had sight of the display. Piaget's lump hammer face shone smooth in the reflected light. A flash from the dark pits below his brow betrayed a glance in Kramer's direction. The Met Mapper started his commentary, pointing a striking, long, manicured forefinger at the screen. A typical genie trait. Kramer could spot the sons of the rich bastards a mile off. This is Loris at 1915. You can already see there's a massive pressure drop going on by the rapid cloud build. If I take it to 1925 and zoom out, you'll see that we've already completely lost the physical topography. The screen showed a great swath of orange cloud covering the circular Loris depression. The Met Mapper continued. We then just 10 minutes later see these anticyclones swinging round as they move to rush in to fill the low pressure, creating turbulence, which if you look at the bottom of the screen is given as winds measured by our ground stations at between 180 and 250 kph. Hurricanes. Piaget interrupted.
You've got some infrared as well. Show me that!
Correct, sir. Our infrared is primarily for ground temp, but a strong heat source such as a Lander exhaust should give us a discernible trace. That is, as long as it's not running with shields on.
Run it, man! I've seen these things before. What was the fix, Kramer?
Kramer rattled out the coordinates.
Give me a zoom on IR. As close as you can at that location. 2000.
1 moment, sir. The Met Mapper winked at the screen and punched another code into his pad. The screen brightened into a massive red. 1 moment, sir. I'll adjust the palette. The red shrank to clotted pools contoured by rippling oranges and yellows. And here's the topography. A green-toned mat unrolled under the paisley of the IR mapping. To the south, the New Mines Ridge was a dark olive fold.
Give me a crosshair on the coordinates.
Piggott couldn't see a thing. A white circle, a centimeter across, appeared in the center of the bottom half of the screen.
More zoom.
Anderson, sir. The Met Mapper turned and virtually beamed at Piaget. The commandant wanted his name. Kramer thought he was going to kiss the superior officer. He was close enough. I can't get any more natural zoom, sir. I can go enhanced, but it's less accurate.
Do it, Anderson.
The white circle bloomed to the edges of the monitor. In the center was a tiny blue and white cluster of polygons.
Bingo! That's L6!
Piaget leaned even closer, brushing Anderson's shoulder with his breast ID. I agree, sir, chimed the Met Mapper.
Now run the scan from there at 1 minute samples.
Just 2 screens flashed up and the polygons vanished. The screen looked at 2003. Kramer felt a jolt of deja vu. I'll try air traffic again, sir, said Kramer, picking up the Descom set.